Okay, I'm here with Micah Mitchell, co-founder of Membarium. Micah, thanks so much for coming on and talking about memberships today.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me.
So we had a chat yesterday. I was on your podcast and now you're on my podcast. And man, so many things to talk about, but I guess I'd like to start just to focus on you a little bit first. What is something that you might consider your unique ability? And I mean that in the strategic coach sense of the term, where maybe something that you've always found easy to do and that other people thought that, wow, how does he do that? Or something that over time you realize that it comes very naturally to you that you also enjoy tremendously. If you can fathom such a thing, what would it be?
Yeah, this is a little bit nerdy and a niche. Infusionsoft came to mind, right? Keep, Confusionsoft, like we were talking about. And in the strategic coach sense, it's something that for the longest time people were like, how do you do that? Where did you come from? Like, how is this happening? And I'm like, why don't you get this? Like, this is like breathing. It's so easy and simple. And look, you just but. So yeah, I would say that automation, and especially because I did training on it, meaning I produced training for it, being able to take those complex things and make them simple, because those people who didn't get it, tons and tons of people over the years have told me like, oh, I learned everything I know about this from you all these years ago from your videos. And so yeah, that's what comes to mind.
So just to clarify, you're referring to being able to engineer workflows and automation processes and sort of externalize those into a schematic that then runs. You can visually interact with it in Keep.
Yeah, and it might almost be, because I played a lot of StarCraft and enjoyed that, it's almost like just being able to use the software. So yes, I might be good at maybe designing automations, but really most of the designs of the automations came from my clients, and they'd say, oh, look at this flow chart or whatever. Look at my business. Here's how it works. How do I get that into here? And to me, it was like just plain as day. Oh, you do this and that and the other thing, and you hook them together like this. And yeah.
Okay. So then I suppose coming to my next question, it was a pretty natural transition for you to co-found Membarium. How did what's the genesis story of Membarium? How long ago was it?
Man, it's a wild story. Membarium itself, we got our first customer in 2014. So this year we celebrated our 10th anniversary. And that's really fun because we have some customers who've been billing for 10 years, some even on the same credit card. I'm sure the system had updated their expiration date, but like seriously, the record is like they bought and they've just been billing for 10 years, right? And obviously we see them in support and they use our software in exchange for the billing. But yeah, it's been about 10 years. And prior to that, I mentioned the Infusionsoft training. I was kind of the only person at the time doing Infusionsoft training. And they themselves did not have videos. And so I created a video course about Infusionsoft called Infusionsoft Mastery. And because of that, I had a big list of those people. And a lot of them wanted to build membership sites, kind of similar to your story. Somebody's like, hey, I want a membership site. Another person, right? Build for me what you built for yourself kind of things. And so that's kind of where it came from. But to be a little more descriptive and get a little nerdy, when I first got into Infusionsoft, the first membership solution I ever had built was for Joomla. It was a Joomla Infusionsoft connector. And then I heard about WordPress and built a connector for that. And then a guy down in Costa Rica invited me down there, and I lived down there and built his membership business for a year. And then, ultimately that, a while later, people needed an alternative to that, and that's where Dave came in, my technical partner, and he built Membarium. And it was initially built for Ryan Dice Digital Marketer because they had a bunch of scalability issues and they really needed that WordPress solution, but there wasn't one that worked. And so he kind of built it for them. We implemented it there, and then John Assaraf's site. So because of the Keep stuff, we were already working with all these influencers. They all use Infusionsoft, I should say. I'm interchanging there, but they were already all clients of various sorts. We were already working in their automation. And so when we realized they all needed this thing, Dave and I got together to found Membarium, like I said, 2014, and started rolling it out on all these big sites. And pretty much anybody who's used Keep, like Dan Kennedy, Jeff Walker, Tony Robbins, all of these people have used or are using Membarium because they use Keep, and it's just the most powerful, adaptable solution.
And when you say you built these things, do you mean that you partnered with the developers who coded them?
Yes.
What was your role in these scenarios?
Yeah, my role, I would say maybe customer advocate. I was partnering with developers. And the very, very first version was like going on Elance and hiring a guy from Greece. I still remember, and so I just had to describe, hey, can you, there wasn't like all the language around it. I didn't even understand it. He certainly didn't. So it was more like, hey, can you make it so that when somebody logs in, we can see what tags they have, because people could already log into WordPress. So it's just like that little thing, right? And then once we got that, okay, now can you, and it was, especially when I first started doing it with Joomla, it really, really didn't exist. And it was more, clients were saying, hey, it would be amazing if I could do this. Like, I'm currently shipping out these packages of CDs. I'd love to put that online. Like that kind of simple, early stuff,
Wow. You said something about moving to Costa Rica, and it reminded me of a conversation I had with Chris Badgett from Lifter LMS. Mm-hmm. Was that related to something that he did? Did you guys do together?
No, actually, maybe just coincidence. I know Chris and the guys at Lifter. I like those guys, but no, it was, you might know iMember360. So the founder of that.
Bob Keane, yeah.
Yeah, so he was living in Costa Rica, and I partnered with him for a while and built that business up for a few years. Well, for about a year. And then I moved back to the States and kind of moved on. That's when I pivoted into Infusionsoft stuff.
Ah, I see. Okay, so these were the early birth pangs of Membarium, and then how did it sort of become an official business and you guys started transacting and doing your own thing?
Yeah, the funny thing about, calling it official is when we first did it, Dave, the other co-founder, Dave Bullock, in the contract, he put like, as long as we make, I think it was like $5,000 a year. As long as we make $5,000 a year on this, I'm happy, right? So he had just like coded a thing. He was just passionate about, making that and making it for some of his clients who were at the time just paying him like for hourly coding type stuff. But it surprised both of us. So I guess he really underestimated it. I also underestimated it because I thought, well, I'm going to continue doing my Infusionsoft training, but I'm going to have this Membarium thing to sell. And within like a year and a half, the Membarium stuff had just overtaken everything. In other words, the clients were coming in so fast. Yeah, just organically. And it was just a better solution. Technically, the product was actually better, but then we were much more accessible and friendly and fast, and we're helping people get set up. And like, all these influencers, we would go to them and say, hey, if you'll use our product, we'll switch you. 0 downtime. We could explain to them, hey, here's why this is better, and here's who else is using it and says it's better, right? So that was, I think I kind of had a nice, easy road in terms of startup just because of the current client base I could kind of pivot in. And then for years, it just grew and grew and grew and grew. At one point, we had, I think, 12 people working, right? I just kind of like bulked it up, I guess. And then lately, we've kind of streamlined it down. So it's our 10th anniversary, and it's cool because I think the business is better than ever, but we have a pretty small team now. And that, I've loved all the team members I've had, but man, I love working with a small team better. Someday I'll grow into like some sort of corporate ability to deal with more people, but I'm enjoying being fast and agile.
Yeah, and you just had your site redesigned. Looks awesome and sleek. Man. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like you guys anticipated what I refer, I'm sure I'm not the first one to call it that, and maybe it like subconsciously seeped in from somebody who actually coined it, what I call the deep integration movement, which is kind of this idea that the CRM is the hub of the business, and then your membership and all the elements of your business, all the components of your business are the spokes. And so it's only logical, therefore, that your CRM controls things like the content that shows up on your membership. And particularly if you have a very large membership and you're very marketing savvy, which obviously guys like Jeff Walker, Frank Kern, all these internet marketers are very, very savvy. They have massive lists. They want to be able to kick off automations on the WordPress side and also on the Keeper Active Campaign side. And it sounds like you guys were very early to that. And now there's other solutions. Obviously, there's iMember, ActiveMember, WP Fusion, probably a couple of others that I'm not able to recall. How has that trend played out as far as has it grown, do you think? Is that going to be more of a thing going forward, that people are sort of living in their CRM?
I think so. And I've always thought of it just like you mentioned. The CRM is the hub and all the other things are spokes, especially with Keep, where it is controlling your your emails and your e-commerce and your CRM, et cetera. It's like an all-in-one. It is interesting to me to watch these SaaS platforms, like Thinkific or Kajabi, where they see themselves, I think, as the hub, right? And they're like, yeah, you can add on a mailer, you can add on a cart, but like we're doing a lot of the logic. To me, though, yeah, you can't beat a CRM for logic. And for example, ActiveCampaign is another solution that we integrate with. Talking to them, the CEO was basically saying they, for a while, were expanding out of their prime directive of automation, right? Or campaigns. And they were trying to really be a lot of other things, trying to add on a lot of things. And he's like, yeah, we're not necessarily unwinding that, but we're really getting back focused on our core, which is automation and like integrating AI into automation. And that made me so happy because it's like, yeah, you can't be great at everything. You guys are already so good at automation. If you just stick to that, you'll continue to be the best at just the core of automation, almost like the AI or the logic or the brain layer of the business is how I look at it. Of course, other things have some level of, let's call it automation, but ActiveCampaign actually has decision-making logic, right? So yeah, I would agree entirely with what you said. I think there's room for all sorts of players because not all business owners, like for example, we're even looking at, could Membarium be CRM less? And what would that look like? And kind of like, is it even valuable if it's CRM less? Like what does it have that all these other plugins don't, And there are some components, but definitely our bread and butter is, you let Keep or ActiveCampaign run the show. You efficiently connect to the API because that's the reason these big people will use our plugin is once you're working with APIs, there's quotas and costs and downtime and, So, yeah, I guess I am in line entirely with the idea of the hub being the CRM.
Is there a specific reason that you focus on Keep and ActiveCampaign particularly, or are you looking at things like HubSpot or Entreport in the future?
Yes. Our Dave, for example, he built a HubSpot, membership plugin. It's a very different environment. And I'm sure you can be successful doing it to a degree. And we've had people ask for, Membarium for HubSpot. But I guess Keep, for one, has the partner community. So yes, the software, but it has a very big partner community. They've done a good job for a lot of years of having annual events, having partner events, and so on. And for us, that's mostly how we sell. We get the partners to prefer us. They're the ones interacting with all the clients. We call it sell the sellers. So our main strategy is sell the sellers. And so since Keep has an accessible market of sellers, their partner community, we go and say to them, hey, you're certified in Keep. Do you want to be certified in Membarium? We'll give you a discount. We'll give you this and that for free. We'll train you all you want. I've been giving away some free tickets to our event to people who I want to not just be certified partners, but agency partners like higher level. So they have the partner community, and also people are paying a decent amount for Keep where they can afford add-ons. But I think once you get into HubSpot, Salesforce, some of these things, sometimes they're also going to custom build some of these things instead of just buy your product,
Yeah, and it leads me to the question of when is it appropriate to use a solution like Membarium, which is centric or CRM centric, versus something that is CRM less, any of the number of other membership plugins that are out there. Do you prefer a particular type of customer? Is there a particular avatar that Membarium is able to serve the best, let's say? Like obviously you want to help everybody who comes to you who you can help, but typically there's some kind of 80-20 here where a certain avatar of customer benefits disproportionately from what you offer, and you're sort of able to help them more so than another type.
Yeah. We talk about how we help like speakers, authors, coaches, consultants, but I would say speaker is kind of the tip of that spear, where if someone's speaking, they often also have a book, they have a following, they might start to create courses out of that book or separately, etc. Those, and the reason they are prime for us is because they then have to integrate all those things into one cohesive experience for their customer, right? Oh, you saw me on stage and you bought my thing at this event. Did you get the bonus or not? Was the billing set up right? The payment plans? Did your card expire? All these things where they want to just go stage to stage and speak, and they do need the automation to take care of the fulfillment, right? That's like their dream. And since Keep has it all in one system where the affiliates, the e-commerce, et cetera, it may not be the best at any one thing. I love you, Keep, but like you can't be the best at everything, right? But the connection of all the things in one place is usually what these people are getting from it. They're like, yeah, simplify my life. And they'll see some other speaker who's like, oh yeah, I use Keep and it's all automated and magic and whatever. And that's what they want. Sometimes it takes a while to get there, but I would say speaker for those reasons.
Okay. And is there a particular, well, to circle back to the previous question, is that why Keep and Active Campaign are the current focus in terms of like they've got the partner community and they're both very strong on automation and they're able to handle this type of use case where there's disparate parts of the business? Maybe there's an e-commerce component, there's digital products of various kinds, and you need to keep everything very organized on the back end, make sure people are getting the various offers and tags and custom fields and all that good stuff.
Yeah, exactly. There's more layers. I think talking to you guys, the way you describe the layers that a membership site needs versus another type of business, the more layers, the more they need us, pretty much, because the processing power, right? And I know you know this from your hosting experience, but us on the membership plugin side think the exact same way, where it's like, yeah, it has to be best in class for those scale moments that are just too valuable to screw up. Like, our plugin is, I think the base plan for Keep is like $77 a month, which sounds expensive until you just spent $1 million setting up a launch and your whole thing goes offline and you lose $20,000 a month in future revenue because a bunch of people are pissed at you because they couldn't get in, right? It's like, and that's exactly why people are coming to us and they're like, never again. I don't want that to ever happen again, right? And we're like, yeah, gotcha.
Okay, so it sounds like maybe there's also a size component to the type of customer you're able to serve best. Again, I think you'll take on any customer who's a good customer. It just reminds me of a parallel scenario in our business at MemberFix, where we'll work with anybody who's, high integrity, is pleasant to work with, who we can help. But we found just completely by accident a really miraculous kind of thing where if we work with, let's say, like somewhat larger businesses, like, a couple $1 million, B2B type corporate businesses that have a lot of legacy tech. We come in and we install something like Membarium and configure it, something like WooCommerce. They're using software from early 2000s, or late 90s, and we show them like all of this stuff that you could do very simply with the click of a button that, as you said, was very costly to develop maybe, or can't even be done at all. They're like, oh, we can just like do all this stuff that we weren't able to do before. And it saves them tons of time, tons of manual effort, hundreds of hours a year in billable hours for their team, and they're just blown away. And I'm like, oh, wow. So like, it's the same thing that we're giving to maybe people who are just starting their site, but these folks benefit completely disproportionately because the value differential is so huge, whereas somebody who's just starting, they're gonna like just by default start with like the coolest stuff available out of the box, right? Because that's where you would start. You would start with the new stuff.
Yeah, for sure the bigger businesses get a bigger bang for their buck. And it's funny because the new businesses often will tell them like, you know what, don't start with us. Go launch your course somewhere else because you're going to get bogged down in the tech that you're not used to. Meaning if they don't even know what WordPress is, we're not going to sell them into a whole package of products that's going to, we're going to say, yeah, go use Thinkific, Kajabi, get a quick start, no problem. We're not going to hurt our feelings, right? And like when I talked about us having a CRM-less version someday, and I don't even know if we will, but the only idea would be to allow people to get started so that when they do upgrade to a CRM, they don't have to move. They can just be like, oh, I already have the best CRM connector available, I'm good. But yeah, to your point, for example, we did a case study with one of our partners in Australia, and the Canberra Chamber of Commerce, I think they call it Business Chamber, but it's the biggest business chamber in Australia. They switched all of their legacy systems, and we're not talking like old computer systems, we're talking like actual paper files. And they were passing forms back and forth and all of this, they have a big membership to manage and all this bureaucracy. And they were able to, this is another place where Membarium comes in. It's not just the scale, it's the custom ability, like true custom, where they're jumping back and forth between our software and PHP as much as they want to do anything, right? We're pulling all the data out of Keep. But they basically turned the whole thing digital, and formatting was a big issue because of the bureaucracy. It has to be this format. The data has to be, right? All these things. And they were able to pull it all off because they're in WordPress where, yeah, you have control, right? Thinkific, Kajabi, any of these things, zero control. So it is scale. It's also control. And that control is probably half of our customers at least because they simply can't do it with anything else that exists. We've been told that a bunch of times, and not just our customers, but partners who deal with lots of customers. They're like, yeah, there are certain things that I just can't do without this. And when a customer hits the point in their business, like let's say one of these speakers where they're like, oh, I want to have a mastermind and I want to have coaching and blah, 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 blah. But when somebody logs in, it needs to recognize all that and put them in the right place, right? That's, for example, one of the things we do that most really don't. And there's so many layers of logic that you ultimately can do, I think, whatever you want. I mean, I'm pretty nerdy and I like to stretch it and push it, but between all the open tool sets you combine, it's like within our realm of expertise, there's not really anything you can't do.
Yeah, and because it's WordPress and because pretty much all of WordPress is open source, you can extend it in any way you want. And I mean, I guess that's the dilemma with something like a Kajabi or Thinkific or Teachable or whatever. It's great to start, as you said, because you can spend less money. Like you don't have to sign up for Keep and for all these other tools and accumulate all of these recurring expenses. You can just like go launch to your audience and see if they buy, and like they want what you have to sell. You can survey them, you can get feedback, you can iterate. And then once you outgrow, which would probably be pretty quickly, then you can go to WordPress. It's always a dilemma I find where people who are a little bit in the middle, right? They're not quite making enough or they're not quite profitable enough yet to where it doesn't hurt to pay for all the stuff that comes with WordPress, you know, especially as you grow, you accumulate a lot of subscriptions and stuff. But then it's like, well, if you were paying a third party for all this stuff, it'd probably be more expensive. You wouldn't have any control over the development timeline. The best you could do is like plead with their team that, hey, here's a feature request that's really, really important to us. What comes to mind is like we use ClickUp, and I love ClickUp. It's great. And there's a feature request that's been there for, I think, for 4 years, and I've upvoted it. I've commented on it because it drives us crazy, where there are threaded comments in ClickUp. And it creates this huge mess because you have to like click into the threaded comment to make sure you don't miss a comment, which you will do. And then you have to like click back, and then there's like all these threads, and we just want like one big row of inline comments, which you can do by turning off the threaded comments feature. But it makes all of the threaded comments you have up until today disappear. So the feature request is essentially like, hey, can we turn it off but keep what we've done so far? And it's sort of been ignored. And it's not that it's not important to them. It's just that it's a huge, massive, how much investment did they get? Like $1 billion? Or even $2 billion. So it's like they probably have things that are much higher priority. And that's cool, but that's higher priority to them or to maybe the majority of users. Like, but what about us? Like, we can't do anything about it, but in WordPress, you certainly can. And that's the beauty of it, but that's also the responsibility and the difficulties that come with it. So on net balance, it seems like these bigger types of businesses, they really are the ones that benefit disproportionately. It sounds like you've kind of giving confluence to that.
Yeah, for sure. And what you're saying about like the being on a big product where you have to kind of like vote and whatever, it makes me think of being in a big country and having to like vote and deal with everyone else's opinions versus like being your own country. And like you said, there's a beauty and a responsibility. Like once it's yours, right? You're in charge of it, but you have that control. So there's give and take, right?
Well, I've got a plot of land. We can go start Membaria together.
Ooh, that'd be amazing.
That'd be tempting. Invite all the internet marketers.
That's right. Anybody who can.
Uh-huh.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just going to say anybody who knows what we're talking about with memberships. I feel like you and I are, when we say membership, we mean the same thing. A lot of other people say membership and they can mean a lot of different things, you know?
Yeah, it's actually not it's a bit of a nebulous term, right? Because like membership, when I say membership, I mean it in a very broad sense, in the sense that you have something that's hidden behind a login. Right, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you sell access to like a recurring membership, like a how to do yoga membership or a gym membership. Because we have a lot of customers who don't charge on a recurring basis, who are maybe associations. We work with like dog breeders and like all of these interesting and quirky businesses that it's hard to slot them in as like a membership per se, but they all use membership software because it fits a lot of different use cases. Is that what you refer to when you say membership?
That's exactly it. Something behind a login, because a lot of them are free. A lot of them are just to update your credit card, whatever. It's like you are a member of a site. That's what I think about.
technical challenges of building Membarium. What's that been like? You are not a developer, I believe, although you're quite technically savvy. You've worked with developers. You're currently co-partnering, co-team working with David, right? You said. Mm-hmm. What does that look like? Because, our whole team is essentially a developers team. So finding, training, nurturing, encouraging really talented, highly technically competent people is, there's a lot of riffraff as far as developers go. And if you're not a developer, it's very difficult for you to ascertain if somebody knows what they're talking about or knows what they're doing or if not. So how have you navigated those types of challenges throughout the life of Membarium?
Yeah, luckily Dave is so competent. Dave Bullock, the co-founder, in terms of Membarium, that my input has mostly been around user experience. I don't need to second guess what he's doing on the database side. Every now and then, two heads are better than one, and we'll be talking about something, and I might have a suggestion that's maybe useful from an outside perspective. But mostly I haven't had to bother with the technical side. He is a developer, and so he's not a marketer. He's not the guy you take to events and like you have, schmoozing with customers. And so I think my main thing has been to not get in his way. Once I know, like, okay, he knows what he's doing, let's support him. And for example, this past year, one of our themes as a company has been to make sure he's always the bottleneck. Not in a bad way, but in other words, like, never make him wait on us, because he's highly competent. There's only one of him. There's all of us, like, interact quickly, accurately, give him as much context as we can. He's a INTJ, so he enjoys context, right? And yeah, even, so like I said, he's very competent. I will say creatively, it is very, very challenging to explain to him, hey, can you move this? Like just the other day, hey, thanks for putting the logo in there. Can you make sure the spacing on top and bottom is just right? And he's kind of, like, well, I'm sure in his mind, he's like, well, it's on there and it looks great and whatever. Like he's not paying attention to design, right? So for me to be like, hey, it actually is important. I know it seems nitpicking.
The button must be blue, David.
Yeah, that's right. And it is an interesting dynamic with us because he does control what goes into the software ultimately, and he's accountable for it, meaning like, if I told him to do some big change and he did it, and then we had all these problems, he'd be the one up all night and day coding, trying to fix it, not me, right? And so, yeah, I try to just respect, like, okay, he's ultimately responsible, accountable, whatnot for it. So these are really just suggestions. And anytime I feel super strongly about something, I kind of go into a mode of, well, I'm going to declutter my requests. Instead of making a bunch of requests and saying, this is most important, I'm going to say, hey, I only have one request, just one. Until it's done, then we'll move on. Happy to support you in anything else, but I don't need anything else except this one thing, right? And that, I think, helps maintain the focus. We're all remote. He is out in Pennsylvania. About a year ago, I went out and visited him in person. This year, we decided to go remote, but then we also meet every month, have kind of a standing thing where we're just communicating, because we see everything so opposite, and that's the strength, right? But it's also definitely a challenge where I think to myself, oh, the user experience would be so much better if this and that happened. And he's over there like, well, I've got to fix this or that bug. I can't do your cosmetic update, right? I've got real work to do, which is also true. So yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. We have a little bit of a unique circumstance. I will say, in working with a lot of other developers, my main challenge has been, you tell them what to do and they do what you said, but they don't intuit what else needs to be attached to it. Dave is one of those people where you can ask for one feature, and in the process of building it, he's like, yeah, I thought of all these other things that might occur, and so I built this and this, and it's like, holy cow, thank you, So it cuts both ways. Like, he knows a lot, and I have to then put in effort to convince him, but somebody who doesn't know a lot, it's like, do I really have to tell you that if I ask you to be able to add something, we also need to be able to delete it, right? Or edit it if they make a mistake? Oh, I never thought of that. And it's like, how is that, So I don't know if any of that resonates with you, but that's some of my experience.
So it sounds like the technical challenges are mostly Dave's bailiwick, and you're more the schmoozer guy, using your word, which makes sense. You're very disarming, soft-spoken, but also very eloquent, expressive. Got your hats collection. You're going to the conferences and stuff. So I guess it works out well, and that resonates with me too, because I've started a number of businesses as partnerships, all of which, except for one, have failed, not for lack of trying necessarily, but we started MemberHost, which is our hosting company, and I met our technical co-founder, who's like my Dave, you could say, who's Denny, who you spoke with a few days ago. And he came as a referral from like a Facebook group. So I never met him in person. I still haven't met him in person. And we had like 1 or 2 calls, and I was like, yes. It was a hell yes, which is a great heuristic that I heard from Tim Ferriss, and it applies in many situations. Like if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And with co-founders, that needs to be like, if it's not a yes, it's a no, you know? And as soon as I spoke with Denny, I was like, absolutely, this is my kind of guy. Incredibly straight shooter, high integrity, super technically competent, runs his own successful agency as well. Like he's in our space, and we just aligned so well that the idea for MemberHost was so ostensibly good. So it worked out in that way. But I think it's not that it was a good idea. Good ideas are a commodity. It's execution, it's the right people, it's the right partnerships, and it sounds like you have an ability to find, and you guys as Membarium, as a company, focus a lot on your partnerships, right? It seems like that's a huge area of development and growth for you. And would you say that's accurate? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Yeah, absolutely. I might have mentioned it, but our main thing is sell the sellers, right? And I guess we say we have CSO. Co-create content is the C, sell the sellers is the S, and O is optimize the offer order onboard. And we keep our marketing about that simple, but the co-create content is partnerships, and the sellers is partnerships. And the only reason we have the offer, optimization, order onboard, all that, is because all that partnership has to go somewhere good, right? The partners don't want to send people to a broken funnel. So we're like, yeah, we have to have a great funnel, but then as far as finding people, it's all about co-creating content, selling the sellers, let them, because this is the way it's always worked out, is it might take me a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever, maybe to onboard a new partner. Like we're going out of our way, training them, and they're thinking like, why are they spending all this time? Because they have kind of a time for dollars mentality. So in their mind, we've donated a bunch of time to them, but then they send us customers for the next 5-10 years, and every one of those customers is couple thousand dollars lifetime values. It did take a while to get there, because we're not talking about big partners that suddenly send us 100 customers. We're talking about people who, hey, next time you get a customer rolling through, think of us, and that eventually, all those trickles eventually become like a stream and a river, is how we look at it.
Yeah, I totally identify. We have made our biggest leaps in growth both on the agency side and on the hosting side through our partnerships with great, sellers, selling the sellers as well, like Membarium. We're a partner. We're MemberPress, LearnDash, MemberMouse, FunnelKit, like all the big players in our space, because we're agnostic, right? Like our thing is to help our customers who may be using all of those tools or one or several of those tools. So we need to be agnostic in that sense. But being able to partner with these great folks is probably our main growth engine as far as acquisition of new customers and opportunities for acquisitions and so forth. So yeah, totally resonate. Now, you spoke to the technical challenges of growing Membarium. What about some of the business challenges, or has it just been rocket ship to the moon from day one?
Let's see. So in the beginning, it was a little bit of a rocket ship feeling. In other words, we had kind of hit on the right things at the right time, and it started like growing, and we were just kind of holding on, like keeping it together. And then when it plateaued, basically what we had was, I guess our challenge is, since we live in, let's say, the keep and active campaign space, one of my mentors says it's the suckerfish strategy, right? We're living on a bigger organism and feeding off of it, right? We're living off of keep and active campaign in a way. But that cuts both ways, because when keep started losing customers, for years, our number one reason for cancellation has been, we're leaving keep. Nothing. We love you, Membarium. If you connected to where we're going, we'd do it. And that's why we actually integrated Active Campaign, is at the time people were saying we're leaving Keep for Active Campaign. And so it was happening so much, we were like, I guess we got to do this Active Campaign thing. And that has been great. But yeah, that's been a business challenge, just kind of, okay, we don't, nobody controls their environment. But since we chose to be in the shadow of another company, our fate was a little bit tied to theirs. Another big challenge has been distraction, because when we grew, and then we plateaued, to me, I was like, oh, it's not growing anymore. And I kind of got distracted. I shared with you, I'd even bought a company. I didn't share with you. I took like 5 years and didn't do much at all. I mean, I was like off, and it was just running. I'd hired a CEO to run it and everything. So I really took my eye off the ball for a while. And then a couple of years ago, I kind of came back, and we've been reviving it. It's got momentum again. But that for me was part of it, is just once I ran out of what else can I do to grow this, like I guess I was doing all the things and it still wasn't growing. And it was kind of more the macroeconomics or the demographics or whatever you want to call it, the market we were in. Not saying we couldn't have done more or better or whatever, but when you're in a fast growth market, everybody looks great. When you're in a slow growth market, everybody looks dumb, basically. And so we're moving into a wider space with our information and training products, essentially, to remedy that. But yeah, that's been one of the biggest challenges, is just, working with so many partners, right? We're talking about partnerships. It goes both ways, because you have all that extra support, but you also have other people impacting you when you don't always expect it,
Because then like ActiveCampaign has raised their prices significantly, like a number of times. And each time that happens, and it's natural that would happen. I think, well, the kind of customers that you want, or let's say like your ideal customers, they actually understand that. They're not going to be super sore unless it's just a mercenary level of price hike. But, like there's inflation. That's a real thing. You need to keep pace with it. You can't just take like a 20% pay cut year on year when your currency is being printed out of existence, right? So you need to do something about it, and that's just the way it goes. At the same time, it's like, well, if people leave Keep, they might leave Membarium. And then if ActiveCampaign does something, if they make the wrong move, let's say, then that would impact on Membarium. And I had a similar realization, because we're also very dependent on partners. It cuts both ways. And I made the realization that as we partner with, let's say with Membarium or with MemberPress, with some of these other companies, and we're listed as certified experts or implementation partners, or however you put it, there are some companies there that I know of, or I know them and the people involved, and I'm privy to some of the work they do and some of the quality of the work they do. And I'm just like, if they have gotten in here, I'm a little concerned, because I'm a little bit dubious of sort of the quality of what they do compared to what we do. I'm not saying like we're the best in the world, or that we don't make mistakes, or that we don't like F things up from time to time. Like we're all human beings, but we're also like very much like a premium service provider in our space. And so I'm like, oh, okay, so we're being commoditized, because we were the first and only agency partner listed as a certified MemberPress expert. And that was great. Like we were getting all these leads coming through, but then other people caught on, and it diluted the number of inquiries coming through. And I'm like, okay, we can't rely on this as the sole growth strategy, which is how we got into the acquisitions thing. Has that kind of been a concern for you? Like is that why you were thinking about potentially going CRM-less, to have like a freemium entree into the paid products, or to be able to cover more CRMs, or like what's the thinking there?
Yeah, kind of all of the above. Because the same thing, like I said, initially Membarium felt like a rocket ship, but it was also minimal competition, and then as people caught on, it's like, right, more and more entrants, lookalikes, all those things diluting the pool. What was the last question there at the end of your comment?
Is this a situation where you want to kind of diversify away from being the sucker fish, in terms of maybe having other customer acquisition strategies, supporting more CRMs, or having a no CRM, like a freemium version that you could list on the WordPress.org repository, and that could be an acquisition strategy for the company?
Yes and no. So the funny thing about, like, let's just say creating a free membership plugin, or a CRM-less membership plugin or something, is that there's more of them than there are CRM connected ones, right? It's an even bigger, bloodier red ocean.
You got to support those people too for free.
Yeah, and I feel like, and it's been my experience in like working with Wishlist, for example, where they were more broad, that then you get people from everywhere. There's less patterns and less, when you do something awesome, it's only serving a smaller percentage of the user base, because they're so broad. And so it's like kind of tempting to go out to that free space, but I'll tell you, not the free space, but like CRM-less or open or whatever. Mm-hmm. But in reality, doing it on its own wouldn't make a lot of sense for us. But what I do think makes sense is to like I said, have that as an inroad to the CRMs where we actually sell them the CRM, not just like, oh, go buy a CRM and keep using us, but hey, we see that you've hit a certain number of users. You probably need a CRM. Here's a free trial with our affiliate link, right? Oh, and by the way, when you activate that CRM, we can pump all of our templates into it for you and things like that. So we're trying to figure out ways we can add value at that early stage because it's so competitive that there's no other reason to go there. Like, unless we can go there as like a, hey, if you know, I guess here's a different way to put it. If you know you will need a CRM, that would be the only reason maybe to start with our CRM less, because we're not going to try to become the best CRM less. And that might never even happen, by the way. I'm just saying, like, that's where we thought, like, okay, we got this suckerfish going. Do we add more CRMs or do we say no CRM, right? And they're not mutually exclusive because we can have APIs and let developers do what they want. But one thing we haven't really talked about that Membarium is known for is our support. And so that's a big concern. If we add a new CRM or a CRM less, it's like, well, then we can't actually give great support because they're going to be asking us about systems we don't know. And today, we know everything in their tech stack most of the time. So we're not just answering from our perspective and saying, oh, it's not us, it's them. We're saying, here, we looked at it, here's this configuration in our software and that configuration in this other software. And with your permission, we'll change both, sync it up, you're good, right? And they're like, oh, wow. You know these other things. So I tread lightly going into the broader space software-wise because it becomes actually more. So for the company, for me, it becomes more complex to go broad versus like niche down. It's like, oh, I'm an expert right here,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it sounds like you want to stay in your core focus on the Membarium side, but you could still grow the business by, I guess, feeding the shark that you're sucking on, like to extend the weird analogy. But
yeah,
if you've got all these people who could use, a CRM, which CRMs pay awesome commissions, hosting also pays awesome commissions, hint, then you can absolutely grow the business. And that's also recurring revenue that you don't have to do anything to support necessarily. That also feeds back and bolsters your business in the sense that, well, okay, if they're using this CRM, then they're engaged there. They're probably going to use Membarium longer, increases your lifetime value. It's a virtuous cycle. Which, that's interesting. We do some little affiliate plays too, where it's appropriate, and we resell plugins with the permission of the developers under reseller plans. That's like a pretty nice little revenue stream. So definitely. And that's one thing I've always battled internally with my leadership team and my guys is like, they get restless and they're like, oh, we should do like this, and this. And I'm like, that sounds cool, but that's not in our core focus. And it's reconciling this thing of like, well, you have to grow and you have to stretch and try new things, but you don't want to be like, for example, okay, if we're positioning ourselves as a premium service provider, which we absolutely are, then it wouldn't make sense to offer like a $50 care plan to beginner. That's just not in line. Like, you don't go into Louis Vuitton and buy like a $20 handbag made in China. That would just devalue the whole brand. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how
That definitely is another component. Even when I bought Wishlist, I was told by one of the executives at Keep, because I thought, oh, I'm going to buy this Wishlist. It's a lower tier software, and I'm going to move them to my higher tier software, Membarium. Mm-hmm. And he said to me, well, those are two different customers. Like, those are not the same people. The people using this they're buying the knockoff handbag, right? They're not buying the Louis Vuitton. You're the Louis Vuitton. So don't expect them to just upgrade because you say it's a good idea, right? And he was so right about that. So I got to eat humble pie for a minute. One thing I was going to mention is, so our current strategy, which I'm fine to share because we're just freaking doing it. Somebody can copy it if they want. We'll do it better. We're building out the membership training, like I said the other day, very meta membership site for membership sites. But we have our membership summit coming up, a live event. And then kind of putting that into the members area and integrating AI and all of those things. So that to me is our wider play, where instead of providing a piece of software to basic users, I want to just provide the training to basic users and allow them to work their way up through the training to where they are convinced they need Membarium and a CRM and all these things, and then they can buy it. Yeah, creating a plugin for all those people would be tough and expensive and all of those things, whereas I can just create some training and pop that out, right? Membership sites eat, sleep, and breathe that. So that's kind of where we're going. We have the event, obviously the things that go with it, the group coaching and courses and training and stuff that we're developing. And that's all this coming year. So we spent 2024 just revamping Membarium. You mentioned the website, like rebuilding that, the brand, building up momentum so that in 2025 we can hit with Membership Coach and the event and the site and really attack AI, because that stuff is for our business membership sites, like content, information, right? It's nuts because that's what it works on, is content, information, language, and that's the whole business, and it's scary and exciting at the same time. But I guess I want to attack it because, it's probably the best defense, meaning if I don't attack AI, I'm going to be attacked by AI, basically.
Yeah, for sure. Man, AI is just crazy. That could be like a whole other podcast. I just want to comment on, like, I infer from your perhaps unintentionally braggadocious comment that, like, you're not really worried about competition. And I like that attitude, if I've understood correctly, because I've always felt the same way. I've always felt like nobody is me. Well, and I don't mean like me because I'm so awesome, though I am, but like nobody is us. Nobody is our company. Nobody is doing what we are doing. And so why would you be worried about, it's like, I don't know, to be cliche, it's kind of like we're all unique snowflakes. And unless you're so completely unoriginal that you're literally just knocking off other people's stuff, which I guess there are a lot of people doing that, then you really have nothing to worry about. There's really enough for everyone to eat. And even scenarios that we talked about, like the commoditization of some of these listings and some of these relationships through new entrants, it's like, well, that just forces you to level up, and just forces you to look for new ways to give value to your audience and to the broader community. So I really, I feel the same way if I've read you correctly. Did I? Was that accurate assessment?
Yeah, exactly. It's not like we're going to take all the business that exists, but like we have a certain way of doing it that nobody can do, and so we're going to do that, and the people who like it are going to love it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you mentioned some acquisitions. You mentioned Wishlist Member. Can you just talk real quick about can we go back to the humble pie and eat a few more slices and just talk about how that whole thing played out? Like, what made you buy Wishlist Member? I remember back when I was starting, in 2012 or whatever, there was like DAP, Wishlist Member, a member. That's it.
Yeah. So, that story goes way back. So I've known Tracy Childers, who was one of the co-founders with Stu McLaren of Wishlist Member, and Stu later, went on to do his thing, and Tracy kept going with Wishlist. But I've known him for, now 10, 12, 15, I don't even know, like a long time, right? I knew him before starting Membarium, I think I knew him because of Infusionsoft and Keep and things like that. And I don't think I even knew he was the Wishlist guy. And then what was weird is, so then we had talked or met at some events, and it was all cool. And then he happened to move out here to Utah. I live in Utah. He moved to Park City. And so we started going to the same Keep mastermind. And then we started, every time we'd go to the mastermind, we'd go to lunch afterward. And so we've just kept in touch all these years and, talked about the two different business models, because they were selling like a one-time lifetime type thing. They were selling bulk licenses. We were selling subscriptions. And so he's a little bit older than me. And when he was ready to exit, he had reached out. And also the weirdest thing happened one time. We were going to an event, and he and I sat right together on like a 3-hour flight. And so we were just like, seriously, like, here we are, and kind of forced to just talk, right? And not that we wouldn't, but it just opened up even more. It's like, what are the odds? And so when he went to sell it, I came along, and I was, I think, bored and hungry and all these things. And I wanted to get out of that Keep Active campaign space and thought, oh, great, Wishlist is broad. And so I bought that, and like I said, at Membarium at the time, we had kind of a bigger team, 10, 12, whatever, and Wishlist had similar, 10, 12. And so now I've got like 25 people. And that was a rough year, because I was losing money and, personally accountable for all these people and meetings all day and whatever. But I learned, I'm sure, more that year than any other year previously, right? I learned to do better strategy, better due diligence, better finance. I really misread the economic situation. I wasn't even tapped in. I kind of like ignored the news and everything. But we signed the deal on April Fool's Day for fun, 2022, which is the first day of the second quarter. And that second quarter was the beginning of the recession that lasted multiple years. Right. And so I bought it at just the wrong time, where like everything started like, boo, And then in the long run, I ended up like, yeah, this isn't my jam. I sold it back to him, and he's since sold it to one of your friends, Blair from MemberPress. But yeah, in the process too, I took some of my team over there. So like Ben, who you've met, he was doing the marketing over there, and it was such an interesting. I guess I thought to myself, oh, I can look at this other person's business, and I can see all the flaws, and we're good at those things, and we're just going to move in and fix them, right? But we moved in and reality set in. It's like, no, there's the grind. There's much more complexity under the hood. And we learned fast and we executed and did a lot of good things, but bit off more than I could chew at just the wrong time. Neglected Membarium a little bit there while I was distracted, another big mistake. And just kind of, it took that year, lost a bunch of money and decided to get out of it. And then the next year felt like I was just like recovering, repairing Membarium. And it wasn't until this year, 2024, that we've really got back on our feet. So it was, talk about humble pie. It's like I had a freaking humble pie restaurant, just eating it all day, dude. It sucked.
That's a cool story, though. I'm sure you learned a lot, and it's one of those things where I think you really learn a lot more from failure than you learn from success, because with success, it's like you don't really necessarily even know what you're doing right. Or it's just like what you said earlier, in a bull run, everyone's a genius. Like whatever shit coin is like going up 1,000%. You're like, oh, I called it from day one of everything going up. Ideally, when you make these kinds of, when you bit off more than you can chew and you make a lot of mistakes quickly, you also learn quickly. So it's actually a good thing, really, even though it's painful at the time. But, it's like there's some kind of sadistic relationship that the universe has with us, where the more tribulations, the more adversity you encounter, really as a person, but you grow from it also. Like it's more fulfilling, even though it's less pleasant. Anyway, that's all, I'm sure, fairly evident
dude,
to you.
And I agree with you wholeheartily. It's so much easier in hindsight to be like, I grew from that. But in the moment when you're growing, you're just like, fuck this, this sucks. But yeah, in hindsight, I'm looking back and it's like, I grew so much and I'm so much, But luckily, as it was happening, because there were moments that were like, boy, this is rough. I did at least have that reference of like, okay, I've been in difficult situations before, been able to look back on them. And so we've joked, even earlier today, we had our strategic planning and we mentioned wish list and we're like, man, we're still bringing that up, whatever. But now looking back, we laugh about it. Yeah, exactly. It's like, I remember hearing tragedy plus time equals comedy. Like the longer period of time, the more like funny it can be. But at the time it's like, no, tragedy.
Man, it just makes me think of something that my wife told me after we had our son. It's like, obviously, like we did like a home birth. So it was like a crazy in-person visceral experience with our home birth doctor, who's this amazing guy we met here in Thailand. And I was there watching the whole thing. It's like, I'll never forget that. And then obviously it's like super, super painful. And it's like so intense and painful that like the woman is just in it. Like she's just somewhere else. Like you're there, you're holding her hand and stuff, but she's just in the ice bath of life, What's weird, talking again about this comedy of the universe, is that after like 6 months or whatever, there's some kind of biological switch where the woman actually like literally forgets. She knows theoretically it was painful and intense and difficult, but she like almost forgets it because the nature wants her to have more children, right? Like to put it that way, right? And so she's like, yeah, I mean, I know it was tough. I know it was like really painful and stuff, and like, but like, let's have more kids. I was like, okay, great, let's do it. But they literally forget, and I wonder if it's a similar thing where we birth our growth, and it's a similar thing. Like we forget how freaking hard and how much adversity and stress and like sleepless nights and like weight loss and whatever else, health depreciation that occurs. But it sounds like you're also a pretty balanced guy, because you also took time off. You're like, okay, I need to step back and reassess. And sounds like you now at least have a pretty good handle on how to balance out your life in those regards, would you say?
Yeah, I'm a lot better. I do a lot of like maintenance stuff. Even when I go to events, I'll skip out on quite a bit of the day of the event just to be like, I'm not here to burn out and go home like dead. Some people approach it that way. So yeah, I've learned to pace myself. And the biggest thing for me as an introvert, even though like, yeah, I try to be the marketing guy and go around, I can do my introversion, but then I am very aware of like, nope, don't talk to me. I just schedule time to go be alone, whatever. And that's helped a lot because I didn't know that for the longest time. It was just like, what's wrong with me? Other people are doing this, and they seem fine. So I spend a lot of time alone to counterbalance a lot of what's going on, and that's helped immensely.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we've been doing a pretty long call here, and I don't want to abuse your attention too egregiously. Well, just a quick side question: is Utah like the new San Diego? Is that where all the internet marketing people? I've heard Park City is beautiful, in particular, by the way.
Yeah, Park City is really nice and beautiful. Sundance, I live closer to Sundance than Park City, where they have the film festival, and Sundance is total magic. I guess we've had a ton of people coming in from the coasts over the last, for a number of reasons, right? Overcrowding, politics, whatever, taxes. Utah's very business friendly. But yeah, there is, I remember in that Keep Mastermind, all the other people running Keep Masterminds around the world were jealous of the Salt Lake Keep Mastermind, the guy running it, because they're like, wait, who's in your group? Like, there's a ton of people here, especially in the Keep space, because they're just south of us in Arizona, and they have a lot of family in Utah. There's kind of like a band on the west side of the Rockies where a lot of families go up to Idaho, Utah, Arizona. It is a weird little thing. I don't know if you know, but we have an area here called Silicon Slopes, so similar to Silicon Valley. And there's Adobe, Microsoft, PayPal, Facebook, like you name it. For some reason, it's sitting up here in the desert. In fact, the headquarters of the NSA, their data center, I can see it across the valley. It's like buried, a mile into the mountain. Yeah, no, Utah for some reason is insanely technical. I think because there's nothing else out here, and everybody's boring because they're, too sober.
Yeah, which is great for like being productive and healthy, and
That's right.
I mean, you can go back to California if you want the opposite, right? And I lived out in San Francisco for several years back in. I kind of tried my hand at Silicon Valley. I was blown away when I got to San Francisco. I thought I was kind of a pretty smart guy. Then I realized I'm like really very average intelligence when I got to San Francisco. Everybody there is brilliant, or was. I think there's been a lot of brain drain and flight from California in general. Yeah, and so I guess to bring things full circle, and man, I wish we could have touched on some of these other topics, but another day. What do you see as the future of WordPress? There's obviously been some antics and shenanigans happening, and does that concern you at all? And does it concern your customers? Have you heard rumblings? And what's the future of Membarium?
Yeah, so future of WordPress, I see these new modalities like AR, VR, AI, whatever, just becoming plugins to WordPress. So I see it as having such a rich development community that whatever technology will make its way into there. In the past, as social media came up, it's like, oh, should we not use WordPress and go have a Facebook group? And then eventually it's like, no, there's a Facebook plugin for WordPress. So I see WordPress as lasting. And yeah, some of this recent drama, I've never really been a WordPress person myself. In other words, I came from the CRM side, not the WordPress side. And so a lot of people know more about it than I do, but those people are often just like, yeah, it's not really a big deal. I know initially it seemed like a big deal, and some people were, like VP Fusion, Jack Arturo was like, oh no, I gotta drastically change. And I thought like, it feels a little too early to say that for me. And then the future, so I guess I just see WordPress continuing to do what it's always done and be kind of the developer-centric area. Sure, another platform will probably at some point move in, but that'll probably make WordPress second place if they do.
Maybe
so it won't go away. Yeah, maybe. And then as far as Membarium goes, I feel like we're just getting started because this last year, our theme was the Year of the Phoenix, and we decided it's our 10th anniversary, but instead of making that, because like I hear of a software company 10 years old, and I'm like, oh, they must be out of touch or something, right? Seems old, seems legacy. And so we are very much working, and the brand was just part one of that, and the event and these different things to say like, okay, let's kind of like Amazon treat this as day one. So the Year of the Phoenix was like burn down everything we had before, burn the old brand, burn any baggage, let's get rid of. Like we're deleting plugins, deleting websites. It's just delete, so that we don't fall into that trap of like dragging around all that 10 years of crap. So yeah, we're trying to reapproach it that way, and then I think Membarium, the core plugin, will keep doing what it does as its core focus, and we will look at from the side adding on AI, because Yeah, we could talk for like probably a day or two about the implications of AI with membership sites. It's almost an arms race to get there. But at the same time, I believe in co-opetition, where it's like if somebody else gets there first, we'll just integrate. We're not going to cry about it. We'll just be like, oh, cool, you did that? Awesome. Let's integrate. Let's partner. Let's go. So,
yeah, I love that. I love the reframe that, this is my competitor. Well, wait a minute. Why don't I go talk to this person and see if we can actually teamwork? And most of the time people are super open to that. I mean, there's like some people that are really cagey and suspicious and like, no, I don't, but that's actually the exception rather than the rule, I found. Cool.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's definitely been my experience, like on the ground is usually not an issue, very rarely. And those people, it's like, yeah, probably not a good idea to partner with you anyways, see ya.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's definitely assholes in every corner of the world. And I guess too, like, especially if you're dealing, even as an introvert, if you're constantly dealing with people and courting partners and this kind of thing, you probably develop a pretty good nose, as far as like personal integrity of the people you're dealing with, being able to, because some people like, this is a whole separate conversation, but the people who are really like skilled, like manipulators and sort of like users and sociopaths, they know how to fly under the radar really well. So it might not be immediately obvious that this person's like not somebody you want to be dealing with, but you do develop a nose as you get older and as you have a lot of interactions where like something in my body, like I just feel like something weird in my stomach about this person. I don't know what it is. Ostensibly everything is copacetic, but let me like keep this person at arm's length for a little while, and I've really learned to listen to that as far as partnerships, certainly as far as hiring. All of the conventional, or not conventional, but like all of the much touted hiring methods, like the A method for hiring, they're like, forget your gut instinct. Like it's all about references. I'm like, nope, that's not been my experience. It's all about gut feeling. It has nothing to do with references, education, any of that stuff. It's like all gut. And it's never, if I listen to it, it never steers me wrong. If I don't listen to it, I always get into trouble.
Yeah, I totally agree. A good friend of mine sold a business years ago, and I was like, you're so successful. What advice do you have for me? And I thought he was going to tell me like something specific, and he just goes, trust your gut. Always trust your gut. If you don't trust your gut, you're screwed. I'm like, because I thought I was very analytical at the time, and I was like, but yeah, the more I have done it, it's like, it was right, and if I don't trust it, I was wrong, it was right,
Okay, well, I've got a good gut feeling about Membarium and the future, the bigger, better future, to steal another strategic coach, probably trademarked term here. So thanks so much for coming on, Micah. I really appreciate your time and your insights into the business.
Yeah, Vic, thanks for having me on, man. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's great to get to talk with a like mind.